I guess we'll get started here. I know with the vet getting cut off a little bit, I'll kind of take over. So for some of you guys that are on the call that do not know me, I am Scott Dolch. I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Restaurant Association. I really appreciate you guys spending some time here this morning. This is our third webinar, like Yvette mentioned. This one is a little bit more updates. I know a lot of you guys have a million questions. I'm getting them on a daily basis, as well as the rest of my staff. And we welcome and appreciate those questions just to keep coming. But at the same time, I would also just reiterate that I can only provide as much information. I'm never going to tell you guys as a business what decisions to make. All I can do is provide as much information and guidelines as I can. But I do think speaking with your accountant, speaking with your lawyer, speaking with your banker is most important through this process to make sure you guys are making the right decisions for you as we move forward. So with that said, I will excuse me. I will get started with the program. The biggest thing today. Hold on, guys, 1 second. Hold on one.
Hey everyone, Scott just had to step off for a minute. This is Yvette. Sorry, I'm back. I was on mute, but I think Scott's back now.
Thanks, Yvette. Sorry about that, guys. My 2-year-old was playing with my power cord, so I want to make sure that the presentation didn't cut off. So we should be a little less than hopefully 45 minutes to an hour today. Again, I just reiterate any questions. You guys have our contact information. Muted again, sorry. I welcome any form of calls or communications through the process. So let's get started. Today, just our speakers, obviously introduce myself. You have Yvette that introduced herself at the beginning. Nicole Griffin's gonna be on here in a little bit. Nicole is our contract lobbyist, really working diligently on all government affairs pieces to this, especially at a state level. So Nicole, I don't know if you can unmute yourself if you were on and you can say hello to everybody. Try again. Nicole, are you still there? All right. Well, I will come back to Nicole here in a second. And then obviously we have Jennifer Conklin-Smith, who is our educational manager that works with our foundation. We'll talk a little bit about, she also handles ServSafe. So she'll give a little bit of an update today on kind of those areas. So as we move forward, Nicole is texting me. All right. We'll see if we can unmute her here in a second. All right. So let's get started. All right. The process today, I thought the easiest way to kind of give you guys a lay of the land of where we are was to start on a federal side. And obviously, as you guys know, I work very, very closely with the National Restaurant Association. I think I have at least one call a day with their team and their public affairs team beyond. And just wanted to kind of update you guys on what has happened since COVID-19, the pandemic started, and then obviously where we are today and where we're looking to go into the future with this. So I think the updates and the pieces to kind of walk you guys through today, you guys know there's been 3 bills that have been passed through Congress. First bill was on March 5th. It was that emergency spending bill, at $8.3 billion bill. I was actually in DC the day it was passed, down there meeting with our delegation with some of our board members. And then obviously the second bill was that Families First Coronavirus Response Act. We talked a lot about this specific act and how it affects the employees, through this pandemic. We have a webinar that's saved through our social media channels and things like that if you want to go back or if you have questions on COVID Bill 2, but obviously that passed on March 19th. And then the big one, which I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, we'll go through a little bit today, is really into COVID Bill 3, which was which is what we call the CARES Act, the $2.2 trillion stimulus package that passed on the 27th of March. I think PPP loans and other ways to apply began April 3rd. Other parts to this, which we'll talk about today. But again, let's go back and just make sure I reiterate to everybody, this thing is constantly moving and constantly changing. even with the SBA and Treasury, there's so much mixed information out there, and I'm never going to say, hey, this is exactly what I'm being told. All I can do is provide the guidance and the questions that I can ask to National as where we are today on April 16th. Because as you guys know, even with the Treasury and Steve Munchin down there talking with with other facets with the SBA, we've seen different guidelines, we've seen different changes that have actually been more difficult for some of our restaurants across the country. So that's obviously COVID Bill 3. And then the last one is not really the last one, but the next phase, which is that COVID Bill 4, which we've already started conversations. A part of it that some people are calling it National 3.5 of trying to amend the PPP loan process, as well as trying to fix and add more money to it. But then the Bill 4 is an additional stimulus specific to hopefully a lot of different areas, but hopefully within the hospitality realm specifically. So that is kind of the overarching update of the three bills that have passed, and then looking to go into the fourth bill. So let's talk about the CARES Act today. Wanted to kind of go through specifically this act and looking at the paycheck, the PPP loan is, I guess, the biggest part of this that I know a lot of you guys have a million questions, and I welcome them. But I'm going to give you guys at least what I know as of today on April 16th. So the PPP loan was part of the CARES Act. There was $349 billion that was put into this. The National Restaurant Association did a really good job of making sure any restaurant entities that had more than 500 employees in different sectors, if you have 6 restaurants or 12 restaurants, you still were eligible because it was based on location, not based on total number of employees, to really help the restaurant industry. But I think that the bigger part of this was when this was written into law and talked about in late March. I think what they thought of the pandemic and what they thought of where they were going to be in the coming weeks, and what they thought of these stay-home acts and these shutdowns, they thought that they'd have a better opportunity to make this work for everybody. I can definitely attest to all of you guys. The current process for Paycheck Protection Program is not a feasible one for the restaurant industry. Is there ways for you to be able to use it to your benefit? In some cases, yes. However, the way that it has been written in the guidelines that have come out of SBA and the Treasury Department have been somewhat of a somewhat even more so of a challenge. But understanding, so the $349 billion, if you guys know that have applied, are starting to receive your approval. The one guideline I want to provide today that you guys need to know, and I ask of this as we continue to push this out and try to get more support. The time frame for you to be able to use your Paycheck Protection Program and to receive forgiveness is really driven between February 15th and June 30th. That was the time frame that they put on in the bill that signed in Congress, both the House and Senate, and the President signed. That June 30th date is a firm date. However, when you have an 8-week window to use those funds to be forgiven, 75% of the funds have to go to payroll, 25% of the funds can go to utilities, rent, mortgage interest, and those things. However, the issue with that June 30th deadline, we all know in Connecticut, which we'll get into in a little bit, we have now a May 20th time to open, really putting us in a corner about how to use this. And, should you be bringing people back when you're not open, or what capacity? Because obviously the purpose of this program was really about trying to get people off of unemployment, get people back in the workforce, you guys paying them. Obviously, well-intended, sounded good, but the challenge is as we continue to move out, and now we're into the middle of April and we're looking at when we can open, the bigger challenge with this is the last thing I want anybody to do here is to bring people back, go through your 8-week process to be able to be forgiven on that. But then at the end of 8 weeks, you're not having any additional revenue come in and you'd have to furlough or lay off your employees again. I can promise you that messaging has been taken to all of our delegation, and we'll continue to go to our Connecticut delegation about these frustrations. It's coming out of National, of how much this program specifically, especially if you're a restaurant that's completely shuttered right now, if you aren't open at all, the challenges that face you. right now that's the huge messaging on the PPP, and you guys will see it, CSNBC, New York Times, all the different articles that are coming out. These restaurateurs are coming out in droves. It's not just a Connecticut issue, it's a national issue about how the program, why well-intended, has very, very much some negative consequences for our industry, and we need help and support with that. Now, none of that help has changed yet, but the only thing I would continue to tell you guys, treasury.gov is the website to go to. On treasury.gov, understand that there is the PPP section in there. They have what's called FAQs, frequently asked questions. That document has been updated every single day almost for the last 7 days. Understand that with that document, one piece of information that came in late last week, which was very frustrating for us because it was more of a guideline coming out of SBA and Treasury than it was an actual piece that came out of Congress. And that was, once you get approved for your PPP loan, you only have 10 days from approval to originate the loan. The origination date is very important because on your origination date, that's when your 8-week clock starts. This is a big frustration. We actually had a call yesterday with Senator Blumenthal to continue to kind of talk through this. But my advice to you right now, I know some people are like, hey, this loan doesn't work for me. I'm just going to pull my name out. I haven't been approved yet. I don't want to do those things. This is frustrating. I need more support than this. How is this really going to help me? All those frustrations are real. I understand. My only piece and advice to you right now is the worst thing you can do is pull out your application or not at least get approved for the loan. The reason being is there's no penalty. There's no prepayment penalty if you don't use the loan. If you get approved for it and you hold it into a bank account and you wait, 4 weeks and go, hey, this isn't going to work. We're not going to get help from the Congress that we need. I don't want to take it on. I'm going to give it right back. Don't pull your application out if you haven't heard, or make sure you do apply. Everyone should be applying. And that would be my advice right now. And then also talk to your banker and make sure whenever you do get approved, some of you guys have gotten approved late last week. Some are getting approved every day. Make sure your banker knows about that 10 calendar day process. So once you got approved, the clock cannot, let's say you got approved today, April 26th would be your origination date. Obviously we want that farther out. We want that to work for you guys, but understand too, my other risk is if you waited and they're like, hey, I'm going to apply in 4 weeks and get the money and then be able to have a better opportunity to use it because hopefully we have a portion of back open, so on and so forth. The concern with that is, as of last night, I think $300 billion of the 349 have already been put in through the system, and they think by Friday the money would be gone. When we say gone, there's also talk about adding an additional $250 billion to this program to help offset the small businesses that need it. But please make sure too that in that conversation, if they are going to add more money, we are also talking hard about trying to update and amend and fix this program specific so it can actually help you. So all I can tell you right now today, as of Thursday, April 16th, is to get approved and push your origination date out as far as you possibly can and continue to work with us, and hoping that that with the help of the National Restaurant Association and members of Congress, that we can get some updates, we can get some new guidelines on this program, and you have to see fit. The other piece to this too is understand there's still a lot of questions about forgiveness. I don't want to sit here today on our call and tell you that I know all the answers because I don't. And that's really where another piece of this frustration lies. The 75-25% was in the guidelines and pretty clear. But there's a lot of questions about, hey, and I'll throw some of them out there because I get them almost every 5 minutes on a text or an email. Hey, I have, if I don't bring everybody back, can I be fully forgiven? If I only bring half the people back, can I use half the money for the payroll that I have right now? And then the other 25%, how does that 25% for utilities and rent and loan and all those other things fall into this? Is it the 25% of what I use? Is it the 25% of the loan? All of these questions are great ones. These are all questions I'm continuing to give to National, that we are trying to talk directly to SBA and Treasury to get better guidelines, because even in their FAQs, the forgiveness portion is like one question and like a small paragraph about what it means. And everyone's going to give you different answers. Their banker obviously is the one that you want to make sure they have clear and concise guidelines for you on forgiveness if you're going to try to forgive any of the portion of it, which I know you're going to try, but also talking to your accountant, but also trying to get better guidelines from the SBA and Treasury that we hope we will get soon. through this process. But I can promise you that is a huge frustration. I'm not going to sit here today and say, hey, this is the answer, or hey, Scott, I have people that are on unemployment, but if I try to bring them back and they're telling me, no, I don't feel safe, I don't want to go back, can I not get forgiven on that? And that's another question. I would agree with you. It's another piece to this puzzle that makes it even more frustrating in other parts of this. Again, we'll go back to, I can't answer specifically that question to say, the only thing I would say is you can bring anybody back. It's not based on if I worked for you and I'm no longer working right now, you've laid me off, you don't have to bring Scott Dolch back as a full-time employee. You can bring somebody else back that counts towards what your FTE with full-time employment was at the time of you taking your loan based on last year versus what it is now. And then you have up until June 30th to bring everybody back in a portion of forgiveness. But again, the guidelines in this call today is really not trying to dive fully into PPP, but I will promise you, I hope this is at least a little better advice from our association of the frustration that we have with the program, what we're trying to get amended and changed. The guidelines are SBA and Treasury driven. They're not congressional driven. And that's kind of some of the push we're asking our delegation now is to say, hey, can we get that 10 days at least pushed back 20 days, 30 days, so we can originate the date, the loan date from maybe if it's May 20th or whenever we get back, and then have 8 weeks beyond June 30th. Can you help us with that? Those are questions we're trying to do. But then also, if a huge amendment came out in this PPP program, we know it would have to be done through Congress. It's not going to just be the SBA and Treasury does not have the means to rewrite. But some of the things that can be talked about, and still, I know it was a 10-year loan initially at 0.5%. It's now a 2-year loan at 1%. That's another piece is, why 2 years? At least give us the 10 years you had initially put in. And why are we making this more difficult, especially for small businesses? Those are really going to go into, and I'll show you guys the letter that came out of National on a lot of these asks. That's really the update I have for PPP. Obviously, I'll take questions here at the end. I'm not going to go. I think we could probably be on a webinar for 3 hours. That's the most information I have today on this program that I can provide to you. But at the same time, I can promise you I'm working day and night trying to get better answers for each of you guys in this process and trying to give it to you. So that's where we are on April 16th. I'm hopeful as I work with National, and I'll show you their letter here in a second to get you guys even more updates and details. Just quickly, just the what they call the EIDLs, economic injury disaster loans. Those have been out since really the beginning of this process. There's a little bit more money put into it, but there's also a $10,000 grant program that's a part of that. I know there's different mixed messaging that have come out in the last couple of days about that process. People initially saying you couldn't receive an EIDL if you got a PPP loan. That's actually not the case anymore. They did change that. But understanding, again, that loan is a 30-year, 3.75, I believe is the rate. Obviously, you have a little bit more time on that. You have a $10,000 grant. If you use it for things outside of the PPP program, you can have both. And then the last piece to this is the employee retention tax credit. If you're going to go after that, obviously, you cannot receive a PPP loan. But you can use that. It's a little bit different of how it works. I believe it's up to $5,000 per employee. You'll receive it back in a tax credit and how you use it. Additional information is really on the Treasury site on all these different programs that are out there currently. This is what really was passed in the CARES Act. You guys can watch the national news and see kind of the political powers that are getting pushed back and forth about, do we add $250 billion more to it? Our pushback is to say, hey, if you're going to add it, you need to amend and fix this program, especially for our industry. That's why you're seeing a lot of national media stories and things of that nature, really trying to help push how this does not work in our industry fully. But at the same time, if you are open or you're considering reopening for takeout, curbside, and delivery, please continue to try to work through this to use it to the best of your ability on a forgiveness portion. And also, obviously, the loan on the PPP is a 1% loan over 2 years. So it's also something you have to make that decision as a business to what you're going to do, of what you get forgiven versus what you don't. So long-winded, I just at least wanted to give you guys an update on really the three different parts of the CARES Act right now, where they stand. The next piece here is what National is calling phase 3.5. The biggest thing about this is a clear that drawing there. I don't know if that was me. The biggest part of this letter, I know it's hard to read probably from your screens, but it's a little of the stuff that I talked about. This is kind of the ask that that National and we are as well asking of our delegation, specific to PPP. I've been sending it off to our delegation, as we know, but I'll go through them quickly. Revising the loan restrictions, the 75-25 on a payroll side is something that really came out late in the process, which is obviously frustrating because you have other expenses. And if you can't bring everybody back, why does 75% of it have to go to the paycheck piece? And when you have skeleton staff. So that's one of the big asks. Providing flexibility and when to use it. That's all about the covered period and the origination date of the loan, making it work for when you can open. Obviously, if this is a national program, we have different epicenters. We're going to have different parts of the state that are going to reopen faster than others. But specifically, whenever we do reopen, that should really be when our clock starts, or even beyond that, when you get back to full capacity. Because we all know, which we'll go through it a little bit in the state side, the reopening plan, at least initially, we all know the new normal of a reopening is not going to be 100%. You're not going to be able to bring everybody back. So that's a part of the conversation. The other piece is the 10-year maturity date from the 2-year piece. The loan forgiveness reduction exemption piece. And obviously they asked a little bit about the 501c6s, which affect all of our restaurant associations. Weren't even able to apply. And then you can see there's also some talk about the IDLES and the improving of the retention tax credit. So improving both of those processes. That came from Sean Kennedy to, obviously, as you can see, to Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. And initially it was not a whole lot of noise coming back from Congress, but I can tell you, since that obviously was sent last week, in the last couple of days, there's been a lot more feedback from Congress, not just from our industry, that have been pushing back on how this PPP loan is not only not going to work for our industry fully, but it's not going to work for a lot of industries that are out there that have been asked to stay shuttered in the stay home policy. So that's why I do think we're going to continue to keep this 3.5 phase loud and be vocal. And I know you guys, hopefully all of you guys, if you're members of us, you are automatically members of National. You're going to get emails from them, call to action, sending text, sending messaging, stuff we've done before with the Recovery 52886. This is another one that they sent out with this letter that you can put your name on it. So that's really 3.5. And then just moving on to, sorry, real quick. Moving on to phase 4, I'll talk about our outreach to delegation. So that was 3.5. Phase 4, I guess, is a 2-part piece, whether it's that 3.5 of trying to amend PPP, if they're going to add another $250 billion to the stimulus to make sure that it can work for you. So that just kind of goes back to trying to get you guys updates as quick as we possibly can. But also on phase 4, there's a lot of conversations out there about, hey, it's payroll and it's a little bit utilities, but there is so much more that you guys have been damaged and loss of revenue and issues of getting you guys back reopened and back on your feet, and the ancillary, the issues with other businesses that are being affected because you're not open, and so on and so forth. And I don't like to use the word bailout because you guys did nothing wrong. You were told to shut down, but looking at a stimulus package beyond just a PPP and EIDL loans, but possible grants and other things that can come out of the federal government to really help you. There's a lot of things that have been talked about. There's a lot of different organizations that have been formed besides National, that National is talking to. You guys have probably heard of BIG, We Are Big. You've heard of ROAR with Tom Colecchio and others that have tried to talk about the business interruption insurance piece, ways to help support that. And, should you go after, the insurance companies specifically to business interruption and those facets that have been talked about. I would say with phase 4, the ask that we have is, and National is kind of working on that now. They sent a survey out, which we've sent to you guys. I ask each one of you to fill it out. We'll resend the link to everyone that's a part of this webinar today. But the big part about that is it also asks where you currently stand with your business and where you need the most help. And as we talk about phase 4, I can promise you business interruption insurance is a part of the conversation, but it's more on the part of the conversation about, instead of going after class action insurance-based pieces, it's more about asking the federal government, like they did in 9/11 and things like that, to help support us in this issue, or Hurricane Sandy, or some of the other challenges they've had with the insurance, and working together to find a solution, whether it's a federally stimulus-backed program where you work with your insurance companies and your agents and they show you loss and they're able to help you receive grants and funding to help do that process. That's a big talk. Obviously, the amendment to the PPP to give you more flexibility is a part of the conversation, and also just specific grants for our industry. I can promise you, even as I put up a picture here of all the delegation, we've already had individual calls with Congressman Courtney, with Congressman Himes up in the top right, Courtney in the top, bottom left. We had Senator Blumenthal yesterday. We're going to have Murphy here later this week. We have Larson, DeLauro, and Hayes early next week. We are going to continue to stay on top of them. Their staffs have been very, very good with us and talking directly with our congressmen and senators about and women about the challenges that we face. And I can promise you they're hearing it loud and clear. They're getting information from national, which is great. But at the same time, the pressure that we can continue to put on them in this crisis that we're in this 3.0 CARES Act fixes to what else can be done. I think a lot of you guys have asked me individually about, okay, well, let's talk about state. What can the state do? We all understand the stimulus portion of this and the stimulus package that's out there is really going to be driven by the federal government. It's going to be driven by, adding additional dollars, really making sure they understand our industry is unique. We were the first industry that were told to be shut down. We were the first industry that was really, that's been hit the hardest through this. You guys have seen anywhere between 80 to 90% in reduction in revenue, as far as sometimes 100% if you've had to shutter completely. We've had, stats coming out of national, which is why that survey is so important. 3% initially 3 weeks ago had said of restaurants, they've been closed completely and they do not see themselves ever reopening. And another, 11% that are scared and worried that could be them as well. And that is the conversation that we are having. Our chairman of our board, Dan Miser, as you guys probably know, and myself and Nicole have been really leading the charge with our delegation on a federal level to really say, hey, what are you doing? Where are you putting restaurants? Are you putting us at the forefront of this conversation, and how are you going to help us? I will say our initial calls have all been strong. Our first 3 calls, actually, Senator Blumenthal has asked to have a call with all of you sometime next week. And we're going to work with his staff to set that up, whether we do it through a Zoom call or however else we do that. But I can promise you probably other members of our delegation are going to ask for something similar. But I think that we definitely don't want to turn away from that. We want to be as loud as we can as an industry down there in DC to continue to push for the things that we need, the support that we need, and the dollars that we're going to need to get you guys back on your feet. So that is really a federal update of where we are currently, where we are with the CARES Act, where we're hoping with amendment to the CARES Act, the PPP portion, where we are with hopefully new stimulus opportunities in phase 4, but also understand what we're hearing from Congress. At least what I heard from National yesterday on a call is it doesn't look like they're going to come in any earlier than May 2nd. That does not mean we're not going to stop and put as much pressure as we can throughout the course of this week, next week, and the following week until we get to that point, because we can still, legislation can still be drafted, ideas can still be talked about before they get back into a potential session to hopefully vote on another phase of support, and hopefully that we are at the top of that list with that. So that is my federal update. I hope that is helpful. Obviously, again, I know you guys have a lot of PPP questions, and I think that as we continue to get guidelines, I want to make sure you guys understand that the purpose of today wasn't to try to go specifically into the weeds, because you can understand that there's still so many guidelines that have not been shared, that I'm still trying to get answers to. I want to put more experts on a call. I am just an executive director of an association. I'm not a banker. I'm not an accountant or a lawyer to understand these processes and making sure you're getting the right information. But I continue to tell you to continue to talk with your lender, to talk to your accountant, and go through this process as best to your ability and make the best decision for you. All right. So switching gears, I know Nicole, did we get you back? Are we able to unmute you? All right, if we can unmute Jennifer, I don't know if we can get her.
It says she's unmuted. Can we hear you, Nicole? You're unmuted, Nicole.
Well, little technical difficulties. I think Nicole, if we can get you back online, and I think we'll have Jennifer work with you maybe to call in or whatever else to make sure we can hear your voice. I will do my best because obviously with conscious of time with everybody here as we try a new program. I know we used GoToMeeting before, but this obviously with Zoom is a little bit different. So I apologize that we don't have Nicole on. Hopefully we can get her via phone, but I'll do my best, Nicole, update here to get you guys up to speed on where we are on a state level. So we talked about federal. Let's talk about a state. Let's talk about the governor with all of his executive orders, working with our legislative leaders, because that's another portion of what we're trying to do and what the state can do to help you through this process. So our current efforts, there's been a couple updates to this, but at least you guys know we have constant communication. Nicole Griffin, I know, talks to our governor's office almost probably 4 or 5 times a day. We also are talking with our legislative leaders, whether that's Senator Looney, Len Fasano, excuse me, with the speaker, Arasimowicz, Matt Ritter, Themis, and those folks. We constantly have the communication lines open with them, Bob Duff as well, to talk through what the state can be doing, what have they been doing, and how else can they help us, and what are they going to do in our reopening plan, which we're going to get into here in a second. Also, we've sent 2 formal letters to the governor. You guys have seen. We also did an op-ed. Thank you to Dan Miser, Phil Barnett, and Bill Taby for taking the time to do that op-ed. I know we're working on a couple future op-eds as well that we're going to continue to stay in the news. I know a lot of you guys have been asked to do media hits. If you guys are comfortable doing that, I welcome an opportunity to send me a text or call. I'm happy to help you with speaking points. I'm happy to help provide any guidelines I can about what our messaging needs to be, because we need to stay relevant in the media. We need to stay relevant about what you guys are doing. I cannot commend everyone enough of all that you guys do. You guys have adapted. You guys are trying to make it work. Your help for the food for the front lines, to medical workers, to the donations you guys are doing for your own employees and other employees that are in the industry, your support of our hospitality fund. So much is going on. You guys are the backbone of your communities. Let's not forget that. And the media cannot forget that. So we need to continue with our media push. I know Brian Duran on our team, on our PR team that's been working with us, has done a really phenomenal job, obviously with Nicole as well, leading that charge with our outreach and stories. Also on the action alerts, I know you guys took advantage of our action alert on our letter to the governor. We're still kind of working through whether it's our reopening plan or ideas of that. We can use that text alert process and ways for you to send letters. We will continue that process, and we'll keep you guys posted as we move forward. Just a quick timeline. I haven't updated much more than the fact I know you guys at the bottom in the red have mixed feelings about where we are currently in Connecticut. Obviously, we were asked to shut down. We were told to shut down on March 16th. I know we had the addition of alcohol sales, and the governor later the next day brought out the stay safe, stay home policy, restaurant restrictions on payment and pickup operations on the March 26th piece. We've definitely had some additional things in March. I apologize for some technical difficulties today to kind of update this slideshow, but we have had some other things that I give Nicole a boatload of credit here for her work with our governor and the governor's office about asks and things to help you guys in deferment and things of that nature. I know we haven't gotten everything that we'd want, but at the same time, we feel like we have. I don't want to dwell on the May 20th date that's down there. We'll talk a little bit about the regional piece to this, but at least that is where we are. I know last webinar we were on April 30th, but obviously the governor came out late last week on Friday with extending restaurant and bar closures through May 20th, at least on-premise dining. Obviously, so everyone knows that date is flexible, good, bad, or indifferent. That date can stay the same, that date can move up, or that date can be moved back. There's still a lot of questions, and I'll get into that in a second, but I at least want to give you guys an update of where we currently stand with things that Nicole and our team is kind of trying to help work with. So state-specific updates of if you guys are aware of or not. Obviously, we're still asking for more pieces. You guys know the to-go alcohol sales. I know mixed drinks is a big topic that people want. I know other states have added that. I can promise you we're continuing to try to ask that question through this process, but also know with the to-go alcohol sales, that's a unique emergency order that the DCP helped work with us to get that out there for you able to sell beer, wine, I guess full bottles. I see you guys get creative with the full bottles of alcohol to take home. I've actually taken advantage of that, needed in some of the late nights. But part of our reopening strategy is to really talk through these to-go alcohol sales and keeping that a part of this, hopefully through the end of the year at least. Some other parts of my colleagues with other CEOs of states, and we're going to continue to ask for the mixed drink piece. We don't know if we can get it passed, but at the same time, the to-go alcohol sales was a part of this. Also, I don't have on here, but you guys know we have been viewed as an essential business. We will continue to be viewed as an essential business, that you guys provide food and everything, and that has to go with that. If anything got tighter or so on and so forth, but that's a big part of our conversations to make sure that restaurants can stay open and continue to provide for their community. We've also got an extension of liquor permits, and looking at, I believe, obviously you have to be, not I believe, I know, based on that March 16th date, and I've gotten information from the wholesalers as well as beer distributors, that you had to be current in your payment before the March 16th deadline. So you couldn't have been outstanding for you to be able to get the extension. So some of you guys have called me and said, wait a minute, like I haven't gotten my extension. Well, you need to make sure you're working to make sure that you were in good terms prior to that March 16th date or right on that date. And then you were able to get the extension of the liquor permits. Also sales tax deferment for businesses under $150,000 in sales tax for 2019. So the businesses, I think with the 6.35% sales tax, and then the additional 3 months of 7.35 with the meals and beverage tax, we are looking at about 2.2 million is what your sales would have to be in 2019. If you're under that, you're able to defer your sales tax for February, March, and April. We're still continuing to work with the governor. I know that March 31st date came and gone. A lot of you guys had to pay it. Some of you guys weren't even able to pay it. We are trying to continue to push legislative leaders, including the governor here, to help not only the 150,000 or less businesses, but also all restaurants, because we also know that a good majority of our restaurants do better than that number in sales tax. Your profit margin doesn't really change too much. You need to be able to get help here, and looking to push that back and that sales tax deferment. So you might have saw that in some of my media articles and conversations that I've had with the media of, we're going to continue to ask for that. We're not going to stop. I think that we'd even like to ask for, additional maybe month of deferment. Obviously we asked for forgiveness initially. They weren't going to give us that, but we're also trying to ask for no penalties on any of these businesses to make sure if we can get businesses above 150K. Additionally, extension of credit for liquor distributors. I'm sorry, I talked about the permits up top, and I actually meant the credit for the distributors. So the credit for the distributors is just back to that conversation of making sure you were current and in good standing on March 16th. You can extend your credit with them. And then the extension of liquor permits, I believe it's 4 months. I know Nicole is not able to get her audio here working, but it's additional 4 months of extending your liquor permits. We just sent an email out, I believe, yesterday on that. I know a lot of you guys have asked, hey, I got to renew my liquor permit. Should I do that? What's going on? So that was another ask that we made to the state, and we got a response, and obviously that's been updated. So any questions you have, please reach out to us. We'll help you on the liquor distributor side or the permitting side. And then the other big one, which I think is huge, there's still a lot of details to go into it. We've been pushing this in our letter. We've been pushing hard with this, is the no increase in unemployment merit rating during the COVID. I know you guys have been asking this and are worried about what the future looks like with unemployment and your merit and how it's going to affect you and your cost and so on and so forth. The governor has come out with that no increase in unemployment merit rating if you've let people go during the COVID crisis, which is great news. But at the same time, there's still a lot of more details and I guess, fine print that we got to work through. Also, looking at where we are with unemployment. If you guys remember back during our 2008 recession and some of the challenges that our state faced about getting a grant from the federal government to pay off, and they didn't pay it off in time, and you guys got hit with that burden. So this is also part of our conversation, that we do appreciate the governor's office putting this forward in our ask, but at the same time, we also know these 5 things are great, but there's so much more that we need, and we're going to continue to ask our state. I know I would also say there are the bridge loans that are out there. I apologize I didn't put that on there. I will just give you a quick update. I talked to DCD and David Lehman. They extended the process from 25 million to 50 million. They had over 5,000 applications. They haven't granted anybody a grant that I know of yet. They're still trying to go through that process. There's still talk about maybe adding more money to that program. But we are in constant communication as well with the DCD about, whether they continue that program, maybe they make a specific program of grants or loans that are specific to our industry. What else can they do beyond that? So these are the kind of the questions that we are asking, on on a daily basis. I give Nicole, I know we're not able to hear audio, but I do give Nicole a lot of credit through this process of getting what we have so far on the screen. But there's still so much that we need from our governor, and we're going to need as we move forward to a reopening phase. All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Nicole, I can hear you.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you. Jennifer helped me out and we're all good here, I think.
All right, Nicole, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder of all the work
No,
that
you're
you've been
doing
doing. Do you want to update everyone on just kind of what happened with the governors regionally and kind of where we are with the potential reopening plan?
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Apologies for my technical difficulties here. The next slide I think everyone's looking at is about reopening. As probably everyone knows, because it's been all over the media the past few days, the governors of the 7 Northeast states, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Delaware, and Massachusetts have all gotten together and are talking about a regional reopening. That's to say they would like to have similar policies. I do not think they will all be exact. I don't necessarily think what works in New York will work in Delaware, let's say, but they are trying to work together. Each of those states will have 3 participants on the regional task force, the governor's chief of staff, and then someone who is an economic development person and someone who is in the public health arena. They will also be having smaller working groups within each state to talk about best practices and what individual industries need in order to reopen in Connecticut. The announcement of the folks on those task forces will be, I think, today or tomorrow. And hopefully we will be having our voices heard at that task force. I think also discussed in those working groups will be the reopening date of May 20th and what reopening will look like. Yeah, as you all know, there are many aspects to this, everything from the public health side and restaurants to, are we opening at full capacity, half capacity? Will there be social distancing? Will there be outside seating? What will be required of employers and employees? So there's a lot of questions yet to be answered on what reopening looks like, but we're hoping to have those answers for you all in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if you want to wait until the end for questions, Scott. I'm happy to take them when we get to the end. And if there are any other questions on the previous slide, Scott hit everything, all the points there on everything regarding alcohol, unemployment, and other asks we've made of the governor's office. But if people have specific questions, feel free to throw them in the chat room, or I'm happy to try and answer.
Thank you, Nicole. And just to be clear too, so everyone knows from my side, obviously with Governor Cuomo kind of taking the lead in New York, as you guys see with all of these other governors, we as Northeast CEOs of the restaurant associations actually had a call an hour after that press conference, and we have another call tomorrow. I am trying to work diligently with each of these different states to learn about what they're hearing from reopening, what reopening looks like in their state. Obviously, to Nicole's point, we obviously have our own task force. We're going to have a regional task force, but the state of Connecticut, how we reopen is really going to be dictated by our messaging. We do not want to sit back and allow our governor to put out an executive order without us giving our recommendation for reopening. And I'm trying to learn from, especially the West Coast is a little bit ahead of us in some cases, but also not. I know Ohio, Colorado, and other states besides just even these regional states have put out some information as well, that we are getting the information and trying to work through it, because I think everyone needs to be clear. We need to make sure that reopening works for you. I can promise you there is going to be a new normal. I know you guys have already started to think about it. I hope that you are. If you haven't, kind of seeing that, it'd be great to say we're going to go back to 100% capacity and you guys are going to be, everyone's back to work and everyone's going to come in. But realistically, that's not, a reality. We know that, but at the same time, what can we do? What are the challenges that are facing? To Nicole's point, there's a lot of pieces on the legislative ask side that we are trying to ask for, not only the pieces on the last slide, but there's other parts of this that I guess it's in twofold. There's one of what it looks like to reopen and, capacity size to, PPE, if there has to be any, which I hope, could be its own challenge. We all know masks and thermometers are at a short supply and almost impossible to get. But what that looks like, how you're going, maybe it's reservations only initially and you can't have any walk-ins, how you use your outdoor seating. Can you expand it, with your, with the use, if you've got parking lot spaces, maybe you can use that as outdoor seating for the distance that you need for social distancing. All those conversations are kind of the part of the reopening piece we're going to give the governor. But then the other part of this, and I welcome, and I want to open this up to everyone here to send us notes. What else can the legislator, excuse me, what else can the legislation do to help us on our economic recovery? And what I mean by that is, we're talking about the unemployment piece. We're talking about maybe a sales tax holiday. I know they do that for the retail piece in late August, typically before school goes back. Looking at meals and beverage tax to get rid of that indefinitely, that extra 1%. But what else can legislators do to really help us through this process? So, excuse me. But I would welcome you guys to send off notes. We've gotten some great ideas so far. Obviously, the expansion of outdoor seating was one of them. We've talked about, minimum wage hikes. I know we're due for a minimum wage increase on September 1st. Can we look to possibly freeze that hike for the time being? All kinds of conversations. These are all relevant and open, and we need to continue to ask our legislators for as much help as they can possibly give us. I want to lead with that piece to this part, because as we talk about reopening, but also what can our legislative leaders do and our legislation do to help us, not only initially on the reopening, but probably for the next months and years as we try to get out of this and recover from this. So you can put it in chat, you can send us emails, you can send us notes, but I want to make sure you guys are aware of that reopening plan. And I have another call tomorrow with all of those states, as well as a few others, to learn from them what we are going to ask for in a reopening idea from Connecticut. All right, going to shift gears just for a second, and we'll go to questions at the end. I just wanted to bring Jennifer in and just give you 2 updates on a ServSafe piece, and then also on our fund. So Jennifer, if you're there.
Sure. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jennifer.
So really quick, we did have a question about ServSafe classes, so I'll start with that first. The CRA-sponsored ServSafe Manager classes are postponed indefinitely until we know when our host sites and our restaurants can begin having them again and we're able to have gatherings. We aren't able to register or host those classes. As we were on the call, I did get an email update that we are looking at having an online proctoring solution, hopefully by the end of April, so that if people do need to get either new certifications or renewed certifications, we should be able to start processing those. Nicole did help us to reach out to the Department of Public Health. If you have a ServSafe certification that's expiring now, that should still be effective, as the new regulations that recognize expiration dates have not been adopted by the state yet. So if your local health departments are questioning the expiration date, you can let us know about that, but they can still use those because the new food code has not officially been adopted by the state yet. If anyone has any questions about that, you can email me at servsafe@ctrestaurant.org. So in the interim, ServSafe has created several products to help specifically with takeout and delivery and food safety during this time. So you can see on the screen, these 2 products are available on our website as well at servsafe.com for free. These are about 10 to 15 minute videos each and would be great for all of your employees that are still working now doing takeout and delivery. And then we also have the ServSafe Food Handler course, which will not meet the requirement for your QFO, Certified Food Protection Manager, but it is a free program available now through April 30th, and a great entry-level food handler food safety course that would be wonderful for all of your employees to take, whether they are currently employed or past employees, people that you're hoping to come back, so that they can have the most recent information. So if anybody has any questions about that, you can let us know. You can either go to our website, ctrestaurant.org /ServSafe or servsafe.com for those products. I think that's it on ServSafe. And then our foundation is working hard on the Connecticut Hospitality Employee Relief Fund. We currently have almost 800 applications. We opened applications on April 3rd. We had over 400 in the first 5 or 6 hours. We've raised over $35,000 so far, and we are working hard to get through all of the applications, the first round, so that we can identify the most in need, and working and beginning to grant those funds this week to our first round. We have several partnerships, but one of the most exciting is the partnership with 8 local breweries. Actually, there's a partnership with 8 local breweries doing one beer. It's called All Together, and that's a global program that you'll be hearing more about. And then we have partnerships with 4 other breweries as well. The Connecticut Brewers Guild has created their own beer. Bad Sons Brewing and Armada has created their own beer. Firefly Hollow has created a t-shirt for people to buy, and all of the proceeds from those are all coming into the Connecticut Hospitality Employee Relief Fund. I don't know, Scott, if you want to talk about any of our other sponsors as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And obviously put this slide together quickly this morning for you guys, so not as much information. But yeah, I mean, we've had Breskin Barton stepped up to give us a huge donation, and we thank them for that. Tito's sent us a donation as well, so thank you to the team at Tito's, and one of them might have been on today. We also received a donation from the Marine Corps and Law Enforcement Fund. They don't want us to go fully public and promote it through social or things of that nature, but they want to help any hospitality employee in Connecticut that has that's a former veteran or active duty or retired. So if you have any employees that you know of, have them apply. That's obviously a different pool because that's where their funds, and we definitely really appreciate the support that they gave us. We want also, want to honor their way. So just to make sure you guys know, we're continuing to get more and more partnerships. We talked about the 8 local breweries, the All Together beer. Thank you to Billy DeSilva with their comped beer. I believe if you're in the Derby area, go pick up a 4-pack on Saturday. I think with Armada and Bad Sons, we'll have the comped beer available for everybody. And all of the proceeds will go to this. So that 35,000 number we know will continue to increase. You can make an individual donation through our PayPal link on the www.ctrestaurant.org/relief. On that link, we can constantly get, whether you want to give $25, as much as you want to give, it's going to help support our employees that are in the most need through this process, and through this crisis. And I really appreciate all that have already donated, and just continue to welcome as we know we're going through this piece. I know a lot of you guys individually are thinking about your own staffs and trying to help, but this is just another way. If you have creative ideas to partner with us, I mean, we had New England Brewing Company on Saturday or Sunday, I believe, over the weekend, Saturday maybe, had a live concert. It might even been Monday. I don't know what today is anymore, but they had a live concert on Facebook with their band, obviously social distancing, but people could watch their band play, and they took donations. They raised about $1,000. Just unique ways to think outside the box. Really goes back to helping our most in need, really helping our 160,000 employees, the food service employees in our state. And it's just another part of what we're trying to do. With my staff is working hard, going through all those applications, and making sure we definitely are going to be granting people here soon. So I appreciate it.
Really quick, Scott, we have one other event happening Sunday night. The Connecticut Brewers Guild is hosting a virtual trivia night, and the link to that is on their Instagram feed. So people can register, and the proceeds from that are going to the SHERF Fund as well. Perfect.
Thank you, Jennifer. So those are just kind of 2 quick updates outside, obviously ServSafe. Just kind of going back to that real quick, giving my updates. ServSafe's got to play a big role in this, and this is partly my messaging to them, and as well as some of the other CEOs. about you guys go above and beyond. And I know this as restaurants from a food safety and sanitation standpoint. ServSafe's a big leader to help you do that. But one of the asks we have is on a marketing campaign. What is National doing to help us get that messaging out there about all the food, the ServSafe Manager program for food handler. Now there's the takeout and delivery videos that are out there, but you should feel safe going to get food inside of a restaurant, whether it's takeout, curbside. If we do reopen in some capacity, we're going to go above and beyond because you do it every day. And that's one of the conversations I continue to have, as well as other leaders, as CEOs, to say, what else is ServSafe doing to help us? Not only offering products, but they need to be out there in the media explaining that, because there's not another industry that I think takes safety and sanitation at the level that we do. And we need to continue to use that to make people feel safe when they do come inside your restaurants. You guys are doing an amazing job of going above and beyond social distancing, going above and beyond, the curbside stuff. I know I'll give Tyler a shout out here with his Ring doorbell idea. I know some others are doing that with their curbside piece right now to make people feel safe. And we're going to need to do that even when we look to reopen and what that means. So I just want you guys to know I'm going to continue to put pressure on ServSafe as we go through this process to make sure that they are continuing to be our leader in messaging that out on a national level, and especially at a Connecticut level, to help people, come back out and come through our restaurants to support you. So that's really our slide for today. I guess I kind of will turn it over to Jennifer and Yvette, because you guys have kind of been more going through the questions than I have, and see how best I can answer.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we have been trying to get to some of the questions in the chat box, and thank you to Nicole and Bill Clark and some of our other industry professionals that have been jumping in to help get some of those questions answered. I just want to remind everybody, if you have specific questions, please email us at info@ctrestaurant.org. We're trying to keep these questions broad right now that kind of apply to everybody. So I just want to mention some of the questions that were asked that haven't quite been answered yet. And I know these are some questions too that we've gotten quite a bit over the last few weeks. So Scott, just wondering if you can speak to the concern that a lot of people are having as far as getting their employees back, and for some employees that are making more money on unemployment. Is it just a matter of hiring new staff, or what are we kind of seeing or recommending from that perspective?
Sure. Great question. I know it's probably many people that have asked that question, and that is, I apologize, I didn't jump in there on the federal level about the PPP loan and the concerns that a lot of you guys have with the unemployment piece, because obviously that's the additional $600 stimulus that'll come in their unemployment check beyond what they're already getting from the state, and that runs through the end of July. That is something we even had with Senator Blumenthal yesterday in our conversation. It's something not just in Connecticut, but nationally. I think that as we continue to work through it, we're trying to communicate more with the Department of Labor, how they can help us through the process, because I don't think we want to go out right now and say, hey, we could give you a job back and I need to get that forgiven. So you need to come back right now. But I do think as we get farther along down the line here and we start to see a reopening phase roll out and we start to work through this with how the unemployment piece works, I can promise you the DOL has sent us notes and is willing to work with us, and how that, obviously you guys know our state unemployment piece is if you're offered a job and you don't accept it, there's the parameters around not being able to receive the unemployment and the benefit. Now that's something that we're having that constant conversation. I could promise you we have it every single day with some of our board members. But at the same time, it's not just a state level, this is a national level. We're trying to get answers to that question, because that also ties obviously into the forgiveness piece that you have. If you're trying to bring people back to get forgiven, what does that mean? And if they're not willing to come back, how does that affect you, and how's it going to affect your forgiveness portion? So again, it's a question kind of like the PPP guidelines that we're continuing to work through. I would say continue to ask us these questions, continue to work with us as we try to ask the DOL for more information, and our state specifically, of how they want us to do that process, how best we manage that, especially as we get closer to a reopening, through this, because obviously I believe right now you have until June 30th to bring everybody back. But it's definitely a huge issue, and something that it's not just a question you guys are asking that no one else is thinking about. I think the way that it was all well intended to try to get money in people's hands, But realistically, you can't hurt the small businesses through this process, or you got to be willing to help us on the back end if our people aren't willing to come back to work, or for whatever reason that is, or the DOL has to be able to work alongside us to say, listen, we're taking all precautions, we're doing everything we can. It is safe to come back to work. We're going to do X, Y, and Z to check you, and this is the opportunity that we had to bring you back. And if you don't accept it, then we can work with the DOL and make it more difficult. We don't want to probably go down that road, but at the same time, the question's been asked, and we're going to continue to talk with Kurt and others at the Connecticut DOL through this process, because obviously that stimulus, people will just say, hey, I'll stay at home till the end of July, then I'll go back to work. I would hope that in your conversations, I think we as an industry are unique, that it is your family, that, working with them and having an open conversation to say, hey, this is a job that's going to be here for you. We want you to come back. Maybe it's minimal hours initially, or when we get to the reopening. But then also, I doubt they want to roll the dice and say, hey, I'm just going to stay on the unemployment, and then I know on August 1st, I'll be good to get another job, which, that is something I'm hoping we don't get to that point. But I hate the long-winded response. I don't have a direct response to say, here's what you need to do right now. We're trying to get some guidelines to provide you guys more information on that.
Thanks, Scott. In the interest of time, and I know we're already over an hour, again, for everyone continuing to ask questions, some of those are getting a little bit into the details. Please email us at info@ctrestaurant.org. We will either get that question answered, or we'll connect you with someone who can answer it. I do want to make one comment and then one more question for you, Scott. The comment is, and we have had a lot of questions on unemployment being available for those for self-employed individuals. If you have a question about that, please email us. I know that there is a program that's beginning April 30th that's going to provide some benefits for self-employed individuals and independent contractors. But again, email us if you have specific questions on that. Scott, the last question is just on the minimum wage. I know there's not an answer to this yet, but this is something that has come up in questions, and I know we've addressed this, but is there any talk, you or Nicole, that can maybe address this as far as being able to push that minimum wage increase back?
I guess I'll try to answer it, and then Nicole's here as well. There's no promises on anything that we ask for, but there's not a bad question to ask, I guess, would be my response to everyone on this call and sending us notes. We understand, that there was a piece of legislation that passed to get us to $15, last year, but we also know we're in a different time now than we were even a month ago. So, looking at every different way that we can try to go to our legislators and say, hey, how can you help our industry specifically? And, also small businesses, because this isn't just a small business ask on the minimum wage increase, of looking to try to at least push that back or freeze it. It's not just our state. There's many other states which also help us as well that are asking for the same things. But I would say to you guys, there's no promises out there right now. There's no, hey, it's going to happen. But I can promise you that it has been good conversations. We've heard it from both sides of the aisle that understand it. Whether or not we get there, it's going to be a lot of work that Nicole is tirelessly putting in as we put that through. But that also goes back to, there's not something bad. Like, if you guys have ideas, hey, we should ask the government for X. Like, I just talked to Bill Clark yesterday. I know that there's a challenge, and I might just totally botch this, but a challenge about you taking a federal credit on your payroll, but then you're still taxed on it at a state level. We're unique to that because there was something that happened in New York City a couple of years ago, and it affects us now. And obviously Pennsylvania and other states don't have to do that, and you shouldn't be hit for that. But it's obviously something in Connecticut. I didn't really understand. I understood as best as he could give me the knowledge of that. So Bill, I know you're on the call, so thank you. But he sent me a note this morning saying, or last night, hey, we need to make sure we're asking for this and see where they come back. And I think that's what we need to do, is we need to throw as many ideas up against the wall with our legislators, because they need to be a part of the help in the recovery. And we know this recovery is not going to be a month recovery or a couple months. This is going to be years. And we're going to need them to be working on both sides of the aisle to get us to understand we want to take care of everyone. We obviously want to take care of our employees, but we want to have businesses that are there. The messaging I leave all the time with our media is, at the end of the day, we had 8,500 restaurants in our state before this pandemic started. My fear is that we're not going to have 8,500 when we go to reopen. We all know the reality of that. My goal is to have the least amount of restaurants that can't get back on their feet, get more back on their feet, get you guys back, and also have jobs back for the people that are unemployed. that needs to be a priority one. And whatever that they can do to help offset and help you guys is why we are working diligently day and night to try to get some answers and get you guys questions. So it's a great question on the minimum wage. We brought it up just because it's an idea. It's something that we have thrown out. It's not just something we're sitting on. We've actually talked to some legislators about it and hoping to get more information as we come. So Nicole, if your volume still works, I don't know if you want to jump in at all either.
Nope, I think you covered it all. It is something we are asking for, and we'll just keep people posted as we hear back on what requests may or may not be granted. I think some of them we won't have answers to until well into the summer.
Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions, Yvette, that you want me to try to tackle right now?
I think that's it for now, Scott, and we've documented some of the other ones that haven't been answered. We'll try to get back to everybody as much as we can. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So just before, I know a lot of you guys are getting ready to hop off. You guys have been on and been troopers here to go through this whole process as we tried a new system here with Zoom. These are our contact information. So you guys have it. I have Ryan O'Donnell's on there as well. I know Ryan, I try to keep the legal side out of this one today as much as possible, even though Ryan has been a huge resource for us. So thank you, Ryan. I know you're on the call. But I would just leave with all of you guys, continue to use us as a resource. We have on our website, our email database, our emails, our social media. We are trying to update you guys in every form, and we do text alerts now. Every form that we can possibly tell you what is going on, or at least give you guys updates. That's what we're trying to do. I commend my staff and Nicole and Ryan, Jennifer and Emily, all that they're doing to help you guys through this process. But I just would continue to end with, we aren't going to stop. Hopefully this webinar has been helpful. I know we haven't answered every question, but we're here to try to individually answer your questions. We will continue to bring more people into this. I know we're going to try to have a call with Senator Blumenthal next week with our membership and non-members. If you aren't a member, we welcome you to be a part of this. This is why right now it's not really about that. It's about all of our restaurants in our state and having one large voice and getting you guys back on your feet. I commend all that you guys are going through. I can only imagine, the struggles and the anxiety you guys have each and every day. I'm just hopeful we're able to continue to try to help you as much as we can. So thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you, Nicole, and to my staff for your time today. And keep an eye out for future webinars here in the coming days and weeks.